that's both comprehensive but efficient. So if I have 25 students in my class and they're writing 12 to 15 page term papers, how do I give them feedback in a way that is meaningful to them but also efficient for me? And so there's some tools here in Turnitin.com that I think will make your lives easier, and I've really come to embrace it. So there's 4 main features that you'll find in Turnitin.com. There's an originality report, something called grade mark, which is the term paper feedback feature and also grading feature. There's something called peer mark, and I have not used peer mark, but I'll tell you a little bit about what it does. And this may be something that makes a lot of sense in a course that you teach, to use peer mark. And I think one of the neatest things about Turnitin.com is that it's beautifully integrated in Moodle. So all of the grading that you do in Turnitin.com automatically feeds the grade book in Moodle. It's a seamless process. You don't have to print anything out and type grades in or go back and forth between screens. It acts as if it's an extension of Moodle itself. And if you've used Turnitin.com, you know you have to go set up an account and then enter your course. You don't have to do any of that stuff. You just set it up in Moodle and it just happens. So it's a very easy tool to use. And so we'll walk you through the nuts and bolts of how to do that. So the first part of Turnitin.com, the one that most of you who've used it are familiar with, is an originality report. And this gives an overall score, which is a percentage score typically, of what percent of the paper that you're reading overlaps against a series of databases that is part of Turnitin.com. And those databases are created every time a student uploads a paper in Turnitin.com. The database grows. And it's also measuring against published information from a variety of full-text online databases. It's measuring it against the World Wide Web and things published on the internet, and a variety of other sources too. It's very comprehensive, in my experience, what it compares it to. And so it basically tells you, or the student, this percentage of the paper overlaps with other sources. This does not tell you plagiarized versus not plagiarized. It just gives you information. And you've got to dive in a little quicker, a little deeper, to really figure out what it means. And there's all sorts of ways that students can get kind of a red flag score that's unrelated to the fact that they have used material without correct citation. We'll talk about that. So it's a tool, but it's not a substitute for your judgment. The originality report not only shows the percentage, it shows you where the overlap came from. You can even see full bits of the original source material, and it allows you to compare and line up things. You can set it so that it doesn't use things like a bibliography. So you get this like, oh my gosh, there's like 20% overlap on this paper. You go into the originality report and you realize, well, yeah, it's because the reference section matches someone else's reference section, which is actually a good thing, because it means it's in the same format. So that's not a problem. So you can screen out that. You can screen out quoted material too, because when there's quotes around it, the student hasn't usually plagiarized it. They may forget to put the page number and things like that, but they haven't lifted it without some sort of indication that they know it wasn't their own writing. The way I use it, and I think the best way to use Turnitin.com in this function, in the originality report, is to allow students multiple attempts to upload their paper. So, how many of you have been involved in a plagiarism case with a student? Okay, unbelievably time-consuming, painful for the faculty member, painful for the student. What percentage of the time do you think that plagiarism is intentional versus unintentional? Do you think the majority is unintentional or intentional?
Unintentional.
I agree. In my experience, I don't see the research on it, but in my experience, the majority of the time, it's the student being sloppy in their scholarship, forgetting that they wrote word for word down in a paper and putting it in there. So if the student is allowed multiple attempts to upload it, they can upload it and say, uh-oh, this is like, I need to paraphrase this. And then you avoid the whole thing of honor board and calling them out, because the students are getting feedback before the final one's uploaded. So that's how I choose to use it. And as I mentioned, every time the student uploads a paper, it becomes part of the database. GradeMark, which is the tool that I want to spend most time on today, is a tool for reviewing student work and providing feedback. And I think it takes a lot of the time, of the busy time out of it, and it's very customizable based on your discipline, based on the style of writing you're expecting from your students, and you can personalize this based on the way that you like to give feedback. It's a great tool. The feedback can be a written narrative. You can just, here's what I think about your paper. You gotta type it in. It can be what's called drag and drop. So we'll show you how that works. It can be verbal. So you hit a button and say, okay, let's talk about your paper. And you're recording your voice as you go through the student's paper. All right, take a look on page 3. At the end of this paragraph, you have a really clunky transition, yada, yada, yada. And the student hits a button and they hear your voice narrating the feedback. That's a big time saver. I think that's not too different from what you do, Kathleen. When you do editing, you use a different set of tools for that, but you all use verbal feedback all the time, right?
A lot of us do.
Yeah. This is integrated within a lot of different choices, so you can mix written feedback, verbal feedback, drag and drop. You also can grade students using rubrics, and there are rubrics that are already available. You can use your own rubrics. You can share and swap rubrics from each other. And the rubrics are just point and click, so you give them points on each thing, and then boom, scores are available. If it's not a graded rubric, you can give just feedback on the rubric. So sometimes we like to give reflection papers that are really just about participation points and not so much about grades. And the rubrics can reflect that too without giving points and grades. So it's very flexible as well. And we'll talk about the drag and drop in a little bit. I haven't used PeerMark, but PeerMark allows students to give each other feedback. And the system allows, it's customizable. So if you have a class of 30, you can say everybody has to give feedback on 3 papers. And the system will automatically give you, 3, you 3, you 3, you 3. It'll divide them all up. Make sure you don't get your own. And the feedback could be, if you want it, anonymous. And so the feedbacker, the person giving feedback, their identity wouldn't be known to the paper writer. And you can make it so that the paper writer is not known to the person giving feedback. So it's got a lot of the same tools as GradeMark, but it's organized for peer feedback. I think it's a neat idea. I don't know exactly how best to use it. Yeah, Jana?
I'm really excited about that. I'm teaching an online course, and they're doing a 10-page paper, and one of the weeks they're assigned to exchange a paper and give peer feedback, and so that actually sounds like that would be perfect.
Okay.
Versus email, you kind of figure out who they're going to teach.
Right, so you don't have to divide them up and,
That sounds like that might be, so thank you. I'll try and let you know how it works.
I would love to hear from you and any of the rest of you who use it. So that's a very cool tool. And then the Moodle integration, I'll show you, it's just a breeze, absolute breeze. How do you set it up as a place where students can click on and turn it in? How do you set it up in the grade book? It is as simple as these things go. So we'll go through what that looks like as well. Okay, so it's example time. You didn't come here to see PowerPoint, did you? All right, so this is not real. This course is real, but I just added a Turnitin assignment here. And you'll see right here, this is where I've added a Turnitin.com assignment. See where it says example for faculty development? Let me show you how I did that. So my editing goes on. You can do this on your Moodle page if you have it open now, just to get that muscle memory working. So I'm going to put this in like the second week. See where it says add an activity or resource? This is where you put any activity or resource. I'm going to make the assumption that most of you have a passing familiarity with Moodle, because this is sort of got to walk before you run, and knowing how to Moodle before you know how to Turnitin.com is pretty helpful. So these are all the activities or resources that you can put into your Moodle course. And this is, I just want to make it clear in case there's a misunderstanding. I use this tool whether it's a face-to-face class or an online class. I don't really think that it needs to be only used for online classes. It's really helpful in face-to-face classes. So you'll see here, Turnitin assignment. Gives you a little description here. Sounds good. So we hit the add button. And so I'm putting this in under this week, and I'm going to say, summary of research. Maybe they're reading some articles that week. Please submit a 2 to 3 page paper critiquing the article you read. Under submission type, You can either make it a file upload or a text submission. I like file upload because under text submission, they have a window and they're typing right into the window and the power goes off and uh-oh. But under file upload, they're using Word, it's being saved regularly. They'll have a permanent record of them saving it before they upload it. I just prefer that.
Because it doesn't mess with the formatting, the text submission also.
Yeah, it does, that's right. The text, you know, it may not look right. If the way it looks is important, like indentations and things like that are important, then you probably want to just upload a document. And from your point of view, it's the same. It doesn't, you know, it's not easier or more difficult. Okay, you see where it says in the Turnitin advanced options, and allow late submissions, it defaults to no. Here's the part where you would say, generate reports immediately. Reports can be overwritten until the due date. This is where students can upload and upload and upload and get the feedback, and you know, I don't ever have to, you know, get upset with them until the final one has an issue with it. So that I would usually change it to that. And then down here under the grade, this is where you would tell it to put the grade. So if you want to put the grade under discussion board participation or short papers or essays, that's the category I have here. This is all set up in advance in Moodle, so these are my categories, but you would have your own categories and how many points it's worth. So this would all be set up through Moodle. And then you just hit the save and return, and boom, you've got, I'm going to hit the cancel.
So you have to, going back up in your submission type, it has student originality reports.
Uh-huh.
Don't you have to say yes to let them see them?
Yes, thank you. You do have to do that. So let's go back. I'm sorry, I left too quickly before the question. So, well, you do have to tell Moodle to let the students see the originality report. Otherwise, the students aren't going to get that feedback if you're going to use it the way I suggested. So, the student would click on this, and then they would have an opportunity to upload their document. But this is what it looks like from a professor's point of view. So if you click on the submission inbox, I uploaded a paper. It's not, if you know Kirk Ellis, this is not really Kirk Ellis' paper. But he graciously agreed to ignore anything that came through his email saying he had submitted things and he'd gotten grades. So he's the real student who's going to be in the course, and I just uploaded a different student's paper. And you'll see here that it gives this similarity grade of 33%, which I need to look at that. 33% sounds a little concerning. You can see the color is yellow. The color is green, yellow, and red, as you would imagine. But again, not a substitute for your judgment. And as we look at Kirk's paper, or the paper that we pretend is Kirk's, there really aren't very many issues of concern. Most of that is coming from things like the bibliography. So, if I click on the similarity report, this really brings up the grade mark and the originality reports. So this is a long document. I actually used this. Oh, that's quick. Okay, never mind. It's going to take a while. But it is not bad. So, get the student's name out of the way. Y'all didn't see what it really was, did you? It's a really good dissertation. So he did. He's defended and doctored and everything. So this is what it looks like, and you can see that these numbers here are going to correspond to, this is the originality report. You see how it appears clicked? So this is telling me about how original is, where it's matching. You can see these are all 1%, less than 1%. And so the things that are highlighted, these are sort of the word-for-word things that are coming out of other places. So for example, this one, you see the word head injury in the United States is estimated. Well, that doesn't really sound terribly damning. You know, that doesn't sound, that's something that probably appears in multiple places. But if you click on 128, you can see the original source, where it comes from, and the quote there, and you can say, oh yeah, this is not really a problem. You know? So it gives you that original. If you want to see a larger thing, you're like, this is concerning, you can click to see the full source, and it will give you significantly more text to compare it against. Pretty cool tool. Wow, it's kind of, oh, I gotta maximize it. There we go, better. You can also ask the originality report. You can combine, I think, let's see, all sources versus individual sources, and you'll see what, from the most down, what seems to overlap the most. So, as I looked through it, 'cause I don't know why this one is submitted to Walden University, tagged at 13%, but it's mostly from the bibliography, as I recall. So this is an example of the originality report. This is what the student sees. They can go through it and they'll see the highlighted things, and they can fix it. So that's that. Are there any questions about the originality portion? Nice tool, helpful, but yeah, Eric?
Quick question, so the 1% over there, that's like 1% of the paper matches what she includes in her paper, or what is that?
That's a good question, whether 1% of this appears here or whether 1% of this is from here.
I believe it's 1% of the paper that you are looking at
Yeah.
comes from that particular source.
So the report comes to you as well as the student?
Well, yes, like anytime I can look at the report, but I don't look at them until the final one is due, so as the students are, sometimes uploading it or whatnot. Yeah, but it'll show up in that. Let's see, the page is still open.
But your students are responsible for uploading these?
Yes, that is right. So it'll look like this to me on this page. Like all the students will be there, and you'll see that when they've been turned in, when they've been uploaded. You can give them deadlines they have to be uploaded by. It'll block them out if they haven't. So it's kind of like a Dropbox tool.
It'll tell you how many times they uploaded the paper, or just their final?
I don't know. I don't think so.
I don't see a number on there.
I don't think it does. But I'm not sure about that actually. I don't think any of these.
So if they're uploading drafts, you're not seeing that?
I could. Yeah. This is updated in real time, so I can see who's uploading drafts. But if I tell them that you can upload as many times as you want.
So if you just happen to get on, you'll see whatever draft they've uploaded to that point. But if they do another one, the old one is going to be gone.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So you can just kind of track it, see who's uploading, but I wouldn't grade early. If you give them a deadline, don't grade till the deadline, because you might end up having to regrade it. All right. So let's look at the grade mark, the feedback system. And you'll see there's really two panes here. This is the student page. I'm sorry about the comments. These are left over from the Word document. This is not a part of grade mark. They're just in there from comments I had given the student on the draft that I ended up using as an example. So sorry about that. That's not part of it. But so you're reading along here, and you can make this bigger. If you have bad eyes like I do these days, you can zoom in. And let's say, this is this is a really awkward sentence here. So you can highlight that and then click this awkward button. And it highlights that, and then when the student mouses over it, they can get that little piece of feedback. I was joking with Sam, not really joking so much, but at lunch saying, that's one of my favorite pieces of feedback and the least useful, is when I highlight a large section or bracket it and say awkward. Part of me is like, well, students should go back. It's really awkward. Students should know it's awkward because it's so obviously awkward, and then they'll fix it. And that sometimes happens, but sometimes the student's like, oh, this looks good to me. I don't know what you mean by awkward, and it's really not helpful, but it's in.
Steve, how did you get that? I'm still back. How did you get that commonly used box on the roadside?
Ah, okay. So these are the ones that come with, mostly come with the grade mark features. And I've added a couple to this, but check this out. This is a comma splice. What's a comma splice? Some of our writing people. What's the best definition of a comma splice?
It's when you put two independent sentences together with a comma.
Fantastic. So let's say this is a comma slice. It's not. I don't think so. Let's say it's a comma slice, and you just go, okay, comma slice. Okay, so it highlights that, but check out when the student mouses over it. Look at that nice bit of feedback they get about what a comma splice is. So it's not just, hey, you have a comma splice here. It's like, here's what a comma splice is. Here's how you correct it, and that's a nice little feature. You don't have, so it's teaching the student some content about what they're doing wrong. So everybody's discipline is slightly different in the sorts of things they're expecting from writing. So if you were to wanting to make some new things, you could go into what's called the feedback manager, the quick mark manager. And there's a whole bunch of other things that that are pre-populated that you can bring in there. Just highlight and bring on over that might be relevant. Or you can make your own. And let's see. So you can make a new set. Like these are how they're grouped. These are the particular ones within each group. Composition marks, format. I don't know what my clipboard is actually. Here's punctuation, for example, mixing these things. So you can add a new set by clicking on this. Or under commonly used, which are the ones that immediately populate the right, you can add a new one. And for example, if I wanted to do there, there, there. That's what I'm going to call my comment. And I'm going to give them this little box that says, okay, here's what they, apostrophe RE is used for, there with the EIR. That's a common one, right? And then you just, when you see it, you just bring it right over. And so the students will get that feedback, and you can develop a whole page right here of commonly used, or you can go back up here and change the set that you're using. So for those of you that are doing science courses, you're going to have maybe some very specific kinds of things that are relevant to science writing, scientific writing, and notation. Those of you that, I guess with foreign language stuff, there may be some unique things that are specific to
So,
foreign language.
Steve, does the program save your created criteria so that you
It
can
does.
use it for other papers?
With that course, it does.
For that course?
That was my
Well,
question.
well, hold on. Let me think about this. Is this...
I mean, you don't want to do it.
No,
on
it saves it to
papers, right?
Steve. It saves it for me. Because these are ones I created for other courses.
So where is that saved? Since I don't have a paper loaded up, but I can imagine that I'd start getting a bank of these and might have, 20 or 30 commonly used. Where are they saved? If I develop them all for my English 109 class and then I want to use them again, surprise, in English 110, where are they?
I don't know where they are, but they show up every course you have when you use this, when you
Must
use
be in
your
Turnitin.
tool.
When I use to turn it in,
When you use Turnitin.
it'll pop up and then I can scroll over and drag and...
Right. Like, because these are leftover ones that I created for some of my stuff, and they're here too. So I just learned that it goes with me. Where they're stored, it's a mystery. I don't know. Somebody said that like in things up in the air, in clouds, or I don't know, something. All right, so that's a neat tool. Let me go to the next one. This is, you see where it says text comment? So this is where those of you who don't like to get cramps in your hand, and you can fly on the typewriter, keyboard I mean, ba-da-da-da-da, here's the feedback, yada, 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 yada. You can paste into there, or you can do whatever you want. Cool, so that's that. You can also do the voice comments. And this is normally a record button, but I've already recorded like some feedback. Dear student, I'm giving you feedback on your term paper. It was a very well written term paper, and you met the majority of the goals for the course. Your organization was excellent. Your ability to back up your claims was very good, and blah, blah, blah. If I were to discard this, I think, yeah, okay, so this is what it looks like if you haven't left feedback yet. And for those of you who have a computer that looks sort of like these, with a little camera and microphone right there, it just knows. You just hit that button and all of a sudden it's like it's recording you. Like the cloud, it's all magic to me. So it seems to work pretty well. The voice comments, I think, are limited to 3 minutes. So that's a feature I don't know if IT can give you longer than 3 minutes. I can see where 3 minutes is going to be way too short for some of you. Yeah, Dr. Greer is saying, yeah, I'll need an hour. So I don't know if that's something that IT can go into the settings at the administrator level and
So
expand.
are those general comments, or can you go in and point to one place and make a comment?
No, go to the one place and make a comment. Oh, so I showed you how to drag things, but what I didn't show you is how to do this and hit this comment button up here. I'm sorry, I left that out. And that's where, right in that paragraph, I give something. I don't drag and drop. So I can give,
But can you talk there too?
No.
So the talking is just a summary.
Right.
You can only do it once.
You can only do once on the talking.
Oh.
Yeah. The other thing I wish it did that it doesn't do, and this goes back to me printing things out and writing on them. Why in the world you can't do this? I don't know. Somebody needs to put this in there. Circle something and draw a line to something else with an arrow. Why can't I draw on the screen? I don't know. They gotta listen to feedback like that, in my opinion, because I think that's how a lot of us grade. All right, so moving along. So when the student gets all the comments, they can go to this comment list, and it's just, here's all the comments in order about your paper, so they can see sort of in one place, here's everything about your paper. It's a nice feature for the students to see. And the grader can do that too. You can go in before you hit the submit button and see where all your comments are. I find it helpful, by the way, to review all my comments before I go to the next screen, which is the rubric, where I'm going to assign a grade. I think that's just kind of helpful. So this last page is the rubric page. And you can make your own rubric. You can use some of the ones that are already in there. There's repositories of rubrics, depending on the kind of writing. So here's one that's sort of generic. You can see there's claim, development. Look as you hover over each one. So this is exceptional. So at the bottom there, you should be able to see, oops. There we go. So you can see what exceptional is. So it gives you anchors and qualitative descriptions that correspond to each level. But it's as easy, if you really know this, you can kind of go 4, 4, 5, 2, 4, and it gives you a total score and a rubric percentage just by going click, 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 click.
And do students see that rubric?
They see that rubric and they get the qualitative feedback and the number feedback for both of it. So they're going to see this whole thing under conventions, what a 4 is, which is the skill level. It's not exceptional, it's the skill level. Here's what it is, here's how it's defined, and this is what you got. If you get on the worst end of things, where it's inadequate, you can see limited awareness, inconsistent tone, yada yada.
So you can create your own rubrics?
You can create your own rubrics. Yep. You absolutely can. So the way you would do that is through this tool called the Rubric Manager. So you click on the Rubric Manager, and here's the current rubric that, this is one I just grabbed that's loaded into Turnitin. But you can go and create your own rubric. You can do that by, let's see, it's somewhere up here. View available rubrics. And you create a new rubric. You can duplicate a rubric, so you like one, but you want to tweak it a little bit. So you don't have to create it from scratch. You duplicate it and tweak it, and then you have the old one and the new one, which are slightly similar. That's kind of nice. And rubrics that you create will follow you through all of your Moodle courses. And as I just figured out, they will follow you year to year even. So, because these are ones that were put in last year. You can see where I've got here's another rubric that I made, which is research term paper. Slightly different. And so instead of numbers from 1 to 5, they get grades, like from 65 to 95. Probably not the best way to do it, but this was an example here. And you can also, under the rubric, give weights to each area, so they don't have to be even. So you can see that the introduction is worth less than the overall focus and sequence of the paper. So it really is as flexible as you need it to be. It's not necessarily the easiest tool to use in terms of creating rubrics. I kind of, every time I've done it, I kind of like, how did I do this again? So I don't quite find it as intuitive as some other things. But once you get a rubric that you like, you can use it, it'll follow you. And I imagine that as more and more of us would use this tool, we would really benefit from swapping rubrics with each other. Maybe having a central repository of Spalding rubrics. If the QEP moves towards writing across the curriculum, maybe it will, I don't know, hear things. We're still researching what the QEP will be. But if it were to do that, you could envision a uniform rubric that we all have access to, we all use, that's applied to student writing. And we get to look at what freshman, first-year student writing looks like versus junior writing looks like. And we use the same sort of tool for evaluating it. And then we could take that data in the aggregate and not evaluate students with it, but evaluate learning outcomes with it at the university level. So it's sort of a way of doing what College of Ed does with their live text system, if that's the direction that we move. We have a minute. I know we started a little late. I was sort of a sprint through this. But any thoughts or questions about this tool.
Which is
Yes.
a cost.
What's that?
Cost.
No cost. It's just,
It's built in.
Free account, free account.
yeah, it's part of Moodle. So it's just, it sits there as one of your tools. It doesn't cost students anything, doesn't cost us any more than whatever we're already paying for.
So you don't need to create an account and turn it in at all?
You do not.
It's-
Mm-mm.
I just got an email from Turnitin saying we now have a Turnitin account and a password and blah, 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 but I never even used that.
When you say you just got it,
I just
I
got
got
an
one
email
too.
from Turnitin.
like you just set this up like when we were practicing?
Right, I just did.
And then it told you you got one?
And then it sent an email, because I was checking my email.
Uh-huh.
And it says, you know, your Turnitin instructor user profile has been created, blah, 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 log in to Turnitin, and then it gives me my email address, its full name, temporary password, long, difficult string of stuff.
Oh.
But I don't ever have to use that?
No, because it knows who you are from.
But you could now use it if you were looking at a paper outside of a course, right?
Right, right. So let's say you're on a dissertation committee, and you suspect that dissertation's got some issues with it. You could take that paper and upload it to your now created Turnitin account and test it out that way. Or if you're working on a journal article that you're ready to publish and you want to be sure that
Or
your
I guess
scholarship.
if I want to practice on this, I mean, before I like make it all live for the student, I could upload this
Yeah.
paper and then I can kind of practice and see what it
Yeah,
looks like.
good idea.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
So anything else? Yeah, Jana?
I'm sorry, well, you see you haven't used the peer grader yet, but do you think you set that up differently when you set it up?
Yes.
You do,
I think you need to set it up and, well, you need to tell it like how many people get to grade it, whether it's anonymous
okay.
or not. There's some parameters. I just haven't had any experience with
Okay,
it.
cool, well, thanks, this is great.
Yeah.
So if y'all use it and like it, let me know. If you use it and there's something that you think all of us would benefit from, let's keep the dialogue going around these tools. So, thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
I'm told there's snacks in the fishbowl part of the. A lot of snacks today. I
I
know.
have the honor of giving you a gift.
Oh, thank you.
As a presenter. Thank you for participating
Wonderful.
today. I did that in love. That's awesome, very for your patience.
It's nice to be able to get this.
I think I might have. Class on Monday.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you all are so ahead of the game. I see, it's nice.
So excited to do the first online course. I didn't know you, like, I learned, yeah, graduate, I learned so much just starting to let me video. Anyway, well, thanks again, that's awesome, appreciate it.
Turn in your tickets, like put them in the box outside in the lobby. Write your name on it.
Should have known about this. First session.
Gotta see if this
Still
works.
not
I gotta quickly come up with a back.
Now that we have more daytime classes.
What time is yours supposed to start? Is it 3?
I was looking at that schedule, it's not a meeting.
Turned it in, time to need attention.
But I didn't want to keep it. I don't like being. Yeah, I mean, everyone thinks is purely plagiarism.
Oh,
I got it too. Sure now. Should I know who that is?
She's the chair from Berry.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, get a ticket and there's a feedback thing where you can, there's a prize box out in the lobby.
You know, what I mean is actually how to do grading and
How to do grading and
how to set up the grades.
that to me is the thing that I never retain it. Every time I go back to it, I'm like, how did I do this again? I know. They said in a webinar I did that Moodle Jewel people, that they know that that's the Achilles heel of the whole system. That's the one they get the most complaints about, and they know it's not working right.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, do whatever you need. I'm totally done.
How are you?
How are you?
But
It's all
I
you.
think when it comes to the last half.
Right, well, yeah, and that's some of the options. Again, there's more saying. I don't see very much of this as just common.
Yeah, I've had a few even with the trauma class,
Right.
so.
Catherine emailed me her draft this morning.
Where's your box?
Good, yeah.
Where's your,
We chatted yesterday, and she's like,
where's your box?
It's out in the lobby.
It's out in the lobby, okay.
And she's like, well, I think you need to understand this evaluation component. This is psychoeducation, this isn't intervention. So we don't need to evaluate, how the kids are sleeping. And I said, no. Why are you teaching, why would you bother teaching people things if it doesn't lead to behavior?
Right.
So I'm not speaking of behavior lessons. That's not an idiocy.
Right.
Secrecy of behavior analysis. Oops, I hope I'm not recording myself here. Am I recording myself? I was.
Are you saying something naughty?
I was just talking about a student.